Start.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is the LSA Live from Lockdown lecture series. With studio still in lockdown, we are keeping the inspiration alive and the creative juices flowing. The format of this talk will be pretty much the same as the other talks that we've had. It will be a talk done by Abnormal, and it will be followed by a Q&A with the audience. With the chat box disabled, the audience can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to ask any questions. So feel free to do that during the talk and afterwards when we have the Q&A. And with that, I'll hand over to Chiara. He will be your host. Chiara.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. Before Abnormal tell us about their work, I would like to make a brief introduction about this exciting new studio from Milan, comprised of 4 young architects who are exploring the new frontier of communication in architectural innovative language. What's abnormal? What does abnormal mean? Well, the dictionary definition of abnormal is something that is not normal, not medium, not typical, deviating from a standard, something that is usually undesirably and worryingly. This description is very much in line, especially with today's event with the coronavirus. In fact, we are facing and experiencing an abnormal situation where we are all learning how to live our lives in a totally unknown, new, and different way from our typical standards. Yesterday, I was like laughing for at least 30 minutes because talking to Mattia, I asked him what it was like to return to abnormality since the day before yesterday in Italy lockdown measures were finally relaxed. I personally believe that abnormal is working on something unique and new, and above all, managing to be in line and up to date with contemporary events. Abnormal, as a project, began as a graphic novel without chronology, in which outdated 3D objects and unrealized formal obsession are rearranged into spatial narratives. The images they are producing, highly iconographic, allegorically describe the strange intersection between the internet, the gaming, and the religion. Abnormal has been published in magazines such as Domus and Abitare, and has contributed with his works to various cultural events related to design and architecture, such as the Oslo Triennale and the Swiss Architecture Museum, the Triennale of Milan, and many others. Tonight, we will be pleased to have 2 of them, Mattia and Luigi, who through their work, they will discuss a particular theme, against efficiency. So welcome to Mattia and Luigi. I leave the floor to them.
Thank you, Chiara, and good evening, everybody, and thank you for being online, listening to our stories. So briefly, just for those of the people that doesn't never heard about us. I'm Luigi Savio.
I'm Mattia Inselvini.
And we are among the founders of Abnormal. We are a group of 4 people. We met in Rotterdam in 2017 while we were working in architecture office. And we decided to found this collective following our main interest in architecture, design, and scenographies. Yeah. So today, the series of projects we will talk about are at the core of our production. All these examples shares in a certain attitude towards technology, and somehow try to unveil a new kind of sensibility using technology, but avoiding efficiency. Most of them revolve around the needs, the necessity of finding a description of the relation between human and technology, and try to go beyond the superficial definition of technology as a tool. More than ever, today we are deeply...
I will start to share the screen.
Yes,
presentation
maybe
done.
Maybe
Yes.
would be
okay. Tell me, do you see it?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. So Today, I was saying that we are deeply linked, deeply entangled with technology, at the point that technology itself is a part of our bodies, is a sort of expansion of our bodies. So this kind of prosthetic expansion is made out of cogs and microchips, but is also made of protocols and other kind of ephemeral entities such as file extension, coding language, and platform. So all these items are designed to reach the maximum efficiency and to reach a frictionless dimension within which the market economy can exist and can be propagated its ecos in every realm. And of course, one of them is architecture. So, for instance, to make an example, it might sound quite weird to relate the invention of the pixel, the tessellation of the image with market economy. Nevertheless, the invention of the pixel followed by the introduction of the file compression allow the attribution of value to an image, a computable value, and so a market value. So somehow we can say that in the invention of the pixel triggered a kind of evolution of the software, a constant rush to the achievement of the quasi-infinite resolution. And within this rush, many software have been introduced, branded as tools for upgrading creativity, while in reality, everything has been developed to generate a controllable creativity, adaptable to the need of the market. This is why we believe that inefficiency is an act of resistance. In fact, is a current theme of our practice. And first of all, is the principle of our images and our stories. The conception of abnormal itself is an act of inefficiency, we can say.
Yeah, I want to go back a bit to when we started this in 2017. We, as most of young students, were doing a lot of competition after the working hours. And in a way, we were doing competition in architecture, and we had a lot of obsession. We were interested in a lot of fields that went far beyond the architecture realm itself. In a way, after some times that we saw that every time we had to put away our obsession because the architectural representation and the architectural project was something else. Every time we had to have a compromise between our ideas and between what we were really have to do. You know, sometimes in 3D models, you can experiment, you can go beyond the rules of gravity, the rules of everything, that when you do architecture, you always have to stick to a program. So, well, at a certain point, we decided that we wanted to really experiment and we wanted to really go on with our obsessions. And we decided to create something that was beyond the architecture, using architecture as a tool to express something else. So let's say, of course, before starting with this kind of images, we were doing a lot of photorealistic images where all of us is used to. But we were tired of them also because it's always the same. To create a sort of aesthetically pleasing atmosphere, you always have to use the sky of Norway. You always have to use certain kind of people downloaded from Skalgubar or a few others. So we decided to use technology, use rendering tools in a different way, use it critically and try to use the power, not to use anything of the power that software can do, for example, rendering lights, reflection, but just stick to the geometry that was provided by the software itself.
So basically in the process of producing digital renderings, we found extremely liberating the fact that we could mess up with the layers that construct the photorealism. We kind of find our own hierarchy of this layer, putting above all the layer of the normal vectors. So basically through
plug the electricity
charger
before we, okay, I mean,
because technology isn't efficient.
Exactly.
Anyway, like I was saying, basically we started to mess up with the photorealism, and we started basically to construct our hierarchy out of the rendering tools, putting normal vectors above everything. And we found quite interesting, because through the layer of the normal vector, we could restitute geometry without using lights and shadow. So basically creating a world where physical qualities are not expressed, or at least are completely perverted and kind of morphed in an autonomous dimension.
Yeah.
No? So this was like the initial phase. Then when we started to accumulate image by image,
we can say something,
yeah.
something super fast. Something that is quite typical in our images. The normal vectors basically is the way to describe a geometry, and so describe the inclination of a surface. How can they tell us without lights or shadows? They use gradients. That's why our images have a lot of presence of gradients, because every small like a shadow,
without being
color,
specific, like the inclination of the surface according to the angle of your eyes is described by a different
RGB,
gradient of color.
Exactly.
No? So basically here in these slides, you can see the different layers that came out from a kind of normal rendering process.
Yeah.
So you have like the normal, you have the ambient occlusion, you have the Z depth, the RGB color, whatever. If you follow an efficient hierarchy of putting the layers above a layer, you achieve the photorealism, which is described, of course, by lights and shadows. What we have done basically was to use this layer in a different order. No?
Yeah, exactly.
So achieving the image that Mattia was describing before. So at a certain point, I was saying we collected so many images that these set of pictures create a sort of narrative by itself. And we did this at the beginning very unconsciously, but then we realized that like the topic of each image was describing a certain current situation.
Yeah.
So we started to cross-pollinating the realm of games, sci-fi fiction, internet, with other topics much more heavier, like for instance, religion, philosophy, or politics. And through the sequence of the image, we started to develop a sort of narrative. But of course, like this narrative was basically made out of objects and obsession that we collected during our experience. So somehow was quite personal, but also very open to the outside world.
In a way, also, what I think the main shift here was using architecture, and the objective, I mean, the aim of the images was not architecture itself, but architecture was just a tool that we had, and we use it in our language. So what does it mean recycling obsolete 3D objects? It's been done already in history by other people. This is the Villa d'Annunzio in Italy, but also an example that might be more familiar to who is living in London, by the John Sean house. Basically, we started to do the sort of same process, but in a digital world. We started to save all the failed competition 3D models. We started to go on the internet and download every kind of free 3D model that we could find, or a lot of time with bad quality and no texture at all. So in a way, yeah. So also we did this sort of accumulation of a digital hoarding of objects, but not in real life, but in a sort of a shared huge folder where we go and we take whatever we feel the need of. So yeah, digital hoarding is a real, it's actually existing, is a sort of actually an illness about the idea of collecting compulsively electronic material without deleting and without sort of creating a huge mess.
And this is also a kind of very contemporary sensibility, because every one of us has in the cell phone collected the life of a day minutes by minutes, basically. Because we collect images, we collect messages, we collect everything, we collect GPS position, data, and so this humongous amount of data to the eyes of somebody could mean anything, but to our eyes, if you construct in a three-dimensional space, it becomes something else.
Exactly.
And so we started to build our graphic novel. The graphic novel that we produce is somehow built to how to kind of rituals, we could say. One is the pastiche, which is basically to put elements side by side. But the other one, as you can see in this image, is to construct a real project of architecture out of this obsolete 3D. So we started to collage three-dimensionally, let's say, these object, number, codes, experience, ideas, photos in some kind of image that represent an architecture. This is instead an example of the pastiche, for instance, that represent an architecture, but mostly use architecture as a tool of expression. It's more used as a language rather than using our skills to represent a proper project. We decided to use architecture as a language, because it was the language that we were educated by during our years of studies. So, yes.
No, this no, I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned before. Okay, that is more about, of course, after what Luigi was saying before, we started to have a corpus of images, and we decided to use social media and what we had our availability to create a story. But then in a way, in a sort of critically use of technology, we decided to create a story without chronology. That means that every little tile made by one image and by a short story, because basically while doing our images, we were sort of creating our own imagination of what was that, and the images,
almost an haiku,
little poem,
no?
And we're also really subjective, because as you can see, these images are really sometimes made from the eye, almost if you're really like playing in a video game or a VR. So in a way to disrupt the chronological diktat given by the platforms, we decided to do something that could be completely interchangeable. So this could be this grid you can sort of reshuffle as you want, and you can still get the feeling of the air sensation that these images and the stories were creating. Every image was accompanied by as an haiku, as Luigi said.
Small text, yes.
Yeah.
This so we built fragment by fragment, not according to a certain sequence, because when we started to share our images, we felt, as Mattia was saying, the implication of sharing them in Instagram. That means that basically we felt that the social platform, so-called social platform, and which is technology, was imposing by means of its structure a certain order.
Yeah.
So we decided to kind of mock the visitor of our profile somehow, and instigate them to find their own sequence of images,
according
also to their aesthetical feelings.
What catch the eyes, no? Sometimes you scroll a profile, you open one image, and then you find the story behind, but and then you create your own link in a way.
So in this way, we felt like that this was a kind of way of using a platform like Instagram in a not efficient way.
Of course.
Like, so going out of the structure imposed by the platform itself. And we felt, of course, that this was super intriguing, and we kind of start to think to develop in other way.
Yeah.
So basically, after our first exhibition in London, we've been asked to develop our first physical installation. Let's say.
Let's say London when we meet Chiara was invited invited by Annie's gallery. It was the first time that we were asked to exhibit our images in a way, but then we felt that the next step would have been not just the reproduction, the physical reproduction of images, but we need to experiment more and really work in the space itself. Maybe this you say after.
Yeah, so basically, like the project at the Swiss Architecture Museum was composed by 5 curtains that was arranged in the space, creating a portal. We were kind of addressed by the curator himself to do this kind of setup. But the task of doing a physical object somehow trigger our interest in experiment this approach towards technology in other realm. So we started like to think about how we can manipulate technology in the spatial realm, the three-dimensional realm, the physical realm, to create a creative inefficiency, let's say. These are the image of the curtain I was speaking about. So we started to think what is efficiency.
In a way, like Luigi, after we'll talk about some of our more recent exhibition that really tackles the idea of inefficient machines. But then since we are in this particular moment, we were thinking, what does it mean efficient today, and what is the connotation that efficiency has today? Of course, as you know, efficiency is really a word that it's now linked to the idea of production. Like if you are efficient, it means that you are good, it means you are creating value, and it's really embedded with the idea of capitalism and neoliberalism itself. So, you know, also in quarantine, in this period, we felt really the struggle of not being as productive and efficient as we were used to be. Well, this idea, this positive, in a way, idea of efficiency, it can be linked back to the 30s when Edward Bernays, that is the nephew of Sigmund Freud, was, let's say, called by the state of New York and then by the government to do some public relation projects with them. Let's say Bernays is the first one that invented the word public relation. Before it was just called the propaganda, but then with the negative connotation of the Germany, public relation became the new way of calling this way of persuasion. Bernays is famous for being the one that created the strategy to make women smoke, for example, because it made them more capable and make them like different, same level of men, and this is still working nowadays. So, well, in 39, Bernays was called to organize, to actually give the image for this exhibition in the World Fair in New York. And it's the moment when corporation really began to be linked with the idea of democracy and with the idea of the state. So corporation and state and democracy was something that was working together, and efficiency and technology and the idea of a future was really embedded in this concept. So here we see how in 39, for the first time, we have an idea of future that is based on the progression of technology. Therefore, the future is based on the faith on capitalism and corporations. Is it, you want to add something on this?
Yeah, no, I would add also that probably like with the 39 New York's Fair, probably this is the first time that within, of course, the experience of the modernism, technology was used as a sort of propaganda slogan,
Yeah,
to achieve a side agenda. And in our opinion, this is also a kind of more mature way to interact with technology, to use technology, because of course it's not linked to the functionality of technology, we could say, but it's linked more to the people ideas on technology. So this is probably what started to, what inspired us to use technology in a less efficient way, to say something else, to use it as we use architecture as a representation tool, to use it as a language.
Yeah, as you can, as you know, efficiency, in the name of efficiency, also a lot of the things has been done. For example, we know how Amazon has thousands of patents that try to, with sort of wristbands or controlling the employees to make them more efficient. This, of course, has caused some problems also recently, because social distancing is creating a lot of, let's say, problems in the chain, because you have to respect some protocols. So actually, Amazon is being has some problem with even if it's making $10,000 per second, is actually having some problem with this idea of efficiency, and so it's hiring people in the name of efficiency. Efficiency in architecture. WeWork is one of the first, let's say, company near to our field that has been sort of eaten by the propaganda and by the idea of by the Silicon Valley. So what they propose is a hyper efficient plan where there's no room for anything that goes beyond a desk and a corridor. What does it mean for them? Because WeWork, what they call efficient, means that there is no waste space, because what you cannot use is not, you're not making money on that space. So that's why you can see it's only tables and only corridors. This goes really in contrast to what we're used to seeing in also in modern architecture, or even previous examples, where architect has the capability of really do something that goes beyond efficiency and can really invent something where a space is not just about efficiency and square meter and value of the square meter in a way. So why efficient is good? You know, now today the idea of efficiency is also related to the idea of energy efficient. So when a building is energy efficient, it's a good building. Well, efficiency is also linked, embedded in also other things, surveillance, for example, and technology that a lot of time is not really going in the direction that we would like to go. So as an introduction, no, actually, yeah.
Basically, like after this brief research, we started like to develop projects that were using technological tools in a different way, let's say. One of the first projects that we wanted to share is this project, Machines of Loving Grace. It's an installation that we have done together with another collective called Captcha in Teatro Ringhiera. And basically, the whole project comes out, sorry for my cat, which is asking for food. But anyway, I was saying that we started this project out of two other research projects. One is called Googleburg, the other one is called Logistic Landscape. And these two projects have been developed, Googleburg by us, Abnormal, and Logistic Landscape by Captcha. We actually met with Captcha because of these two projects that were so similar. And we found out that like the fundamental basis of the two projects were really equal, let's say. One of the two things that these two research projects share was the inspiration of the poem by Richard Brautigan, Machines of Loving Grace, which is a poem that, if you don't know, tells about a futuristic idea of a world where
it was written in the 70s.
Was actually written in the 60s, and it was written in a certain within a certain scenario, let's say, which is the hippie movement and the dawn of the Silicon Valley, we could say. But it's also true that Richard Brautigan, which is considered a sort of big generation poet, was highly influeed by his colleagues at the IIT college, I guess, where he was invited as a sort of guest poet without any kind of relation to whatsoever discipline was taught at the college itself. So basically, also this kind of connection between Brautigan and the engineers of the Silicon Valley was at the basis of this poem. And in this poem, he described a future where mammals were animals, where humans and the machine coexist together. And of course, all watched over by what he's calling the Machines of Loving Grace, which of course, it's very similar to our years today to the social platform and the digital infrastructure that run globally and connect the world. So what we thought to do was to take the poem itself and translate it in Java code, and then we printed the code, the output code, on a 30-meter fabric, and then we mounted in a sort of machines, and these machines was slowing, rolling the fabric to a sort of spatial configuration where visitor could get in and cross this machine, and was showing the poem. So like this kind of machine was moving very slowly because we thought like that somehow was mocking the relentless progression and the hidden movement and the hidden dynamic of the digital infrastructure. So just to mention a few kind of a nice anecdote about this project, for rolling the machine, we used professional barbecue motors engine that was perfectly fitting in the setup.
It's perfect for the
and also in this case, just to conclude with this project, we kind of used a really basic technology to produce we think a piece of art somehow. That was also telling about itself. It was a self-narrating machine.
I think that also the movement of it, the being slow, it remembers a lot the prayers and the small tools that a lot of Asian religion and culture use. For example, the Buddhists, they use this sort of little tools where the little prayers are inside, and when you roll them, it's an act of praying. So in a way, it's a machine that was sort of looking at itself, and telling something just by scrolling this infinite scroll of the poem itself. Yeah.
So next project that we developed in the...
This is more recent. Yeah, yes.
This is kind of more recent, but it shared with the same, with the project from before, it shared the same kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Let's say it's a project that we developed together with Paolo Patelli, Cyrus Clark, and Monica Seyfried, in occasion of the Biennale of Ljubljana in 2019. This project basically is about like a kind of rereading of the space of the archive. So basically, the archive that we decided to show through this project, it's the contemporary, the temporary slow dance, the temporary contemporary dance archive in Slovenia, which is a kind of a sort of collection of random videos collected by the scenographer called Rock Varvar. And the project itself has been started in his own house. At a certain point, it was called by the Museum of Contemporary Art in Ljubljana. It was called to bring the project itself inside the museum. And in occasion of the Biennale, we have been called like to think how we could expose.
Also because this material was archive was so big and was so diverse that we need to find a way to understand what to display and how to do it.
Exactly. And plus, like the archive itself didn't have a hierarchy of collection. So like the material were stored without any kind of codes, and the media were all different. Some of them were VHS tape that is comes from his own recordings. Some of them are just YouTube video downloaded from the internet. Maybe just stay 1 second this. So we started like to think how we can show this archive. We decided to use the technology of facial recognition and to exploit the glitch coming from this technology. So many of you knows that facial recognition itself sometimes glitch out and start to recognize part of the body, plants or whatever, thinking that are faces.
Yeah.
So working with a coder, and working with Cyrus Clark, which is part of another collective, Grow Your Own Cloud, we are going to speak about later. We started to create an algorithm that could use facial recognition to recognize part of the body. And so through this interactive categorizing system, we were able to showcase these videos according to the movement of the visitor. So the facial recognition, the camera was capturing the movement and then was in real time showing a certain kind of video about that movement. So some few things like in the floor of the room, we place this super nice graphics to tell the visitor the action to do. And the result was that the visitors was interactive and moving and dancing also. So another kind of side output of this exhibition is that we collected videos from the visitor, and we were able to expand the archive of the scenographer. So next project.
Well, as we were saying, as Luigi was saying, we had the chance to work with Cyrus. That is also part of another project, super interesting, that we are really happy to be part of. And Cyrus, together with Monica, they asked us to help them to create the sort of first physical installation for their project. The project is called Grow Your Own Cloud. And what they are doing, what they're trying to do as designer, as a coder and software developer, they are trying to, they did it already, but they are even going further to store data in plants. How you can do this? There are 3 or 4 different ways to do it, from the most stable to the most volatile, but in a way you just modify the DNA of plants and you can store data. This is based on the binary code. So with a sequence of 0 and 1, you can store images, text, and this you can do it. And the idea of their project is that you get the awareness of how data can be stored alternatively to the main data center and to the energy consumption method that we have today. You know that we all know that without energy, all of our data will disappear. While in this way, with the awareness of plans of how can you also transmit data in an alternative way, you can they will give you your own plan. So we created a sort of it's called data garden. It's a carbon negative data infrastructure that promotes unification between people, technology, and ecosystem. It's in a way, it's a sort of pavilion that can work also about itself. When we were doing it, we were inspired by this sort of completely zero emission huts that can be also left in the middle of the desert or in Antarctica. So a sort of self-sufficient machine. In this case, the plant exposed were the one used to store data. And yeah, you can see some images detail. Also, the idea of the cloud is represented with this sort of shape, this curved shape on the outside.
Some more interesting fact about this installation is that, like, the installation was thought like to take part of the
SW no?
festival in Austin, Texas. Unfortunately, this happened during coronavirus, so they locked down everything. But we weren't able anyway to go there to install the space. So they asked us to produce a drawing, a set of drawings that they could share with the constructor. So everything happened actually in the network.
Yeah,
and everything happened from within Skype and Zoom
WhatsApp,
and WhatsApp. Really... and this is also something quite intriguing about the generation of designer that we are part of, because like somehow we are able to design stuff, sharing documents, and create space without actually be part of that space.
We were basically working simultaneously. They were just like literally sending 2 or 3 images on WhatsApp, like, is this, what do you prefer? And we were like really working with them almost real life. This, that you can see this picture, we can also call it as a prototype, as like the model 0, because it's been done, but nobody had the chance to visit it because everything was canceled by coronavirus. But the idea is to keep the same module in a way, but to transport this module around the world, because they have also a schedule of other exhibitions. So the idea was to test, and hopefully at the end of this crisis, this pandemic, we could really see this being realized. And this is just a few other shots of the process of how they collect DNA for the data and how they then put it into plants. This is another, we like a lot of these shots, both of the tube containing the plants and also of the outside of it.
And also all the restraint of the need, the necessity of the plants that needs to be nourished by the lights was creating an unexpected effect, because we didn't expect that the light was coming in this way, and we were very happy. And then we decided like to paint all the structure in green to create a sort of color contrast that reflect abnormal
in a
aesthetics.
way, the UV colors of the plants in a way really recreated a sort of atmosphere that was common in our work, but only digitally. So we're really happy to have this combination between lights and plants.
So next project.
This project is also really recent and also in part affected by the pandemic. Yeah, because it's still there. We have been called by Joseph Grima to participate to this exhibition in Triennale Milano. It was called The State of the Art of Architecture. Joseph Grima was also curator of a Chicago Biennial, and the theme was similar in a way that the idea was to recall a series of practices and to show the state of the art of architecture, as you call it, like what's going on right now. And this second, let's say, sort of series of exhibition was focused on young practice. Well, this, okay, so of course, something really important also, the exhibition was not just the whole idea, the whole concept of Joseph Grima exhibition was a 3-day lecture based on something done by Tigerman a lot of years ago in the 77. Also, Tigerman passed away, Tigerman few months ago. So the idea was a 3-day lecture where the exhibition itself was mounted day after day. So when a theme was presenting was also in a way with a performance creating their own object itself. So the exhibition space for one of the Nostri Triennale was in the big U on the top. We were really inspired by the work of Rainier Banham and his writings, and we decided to steal his text, and then you will see it after it was displaying on our object itself.
So basically, we decided to use the text by Banham, the text called "A Home Is Not a House," because we felt that somehow was very prophetic in describing how space has been contaminated by technology today. But of course, like if in the home is not a house, Banham is describing a space which is contaminated by technology in a very evident way, to the point that a house could be collapsed in a series of pipes, as you can see in the Banham in the drawing of the article. During the 70s and the 80s, technology has been kind of embellished.
Exactly.
And instead of representing the functionality itself, it was representing an aesthetical ideal that everybody has about technology. So again, coming back to Bernays, it was used as a sort of propaganda tool for selling object, again, like related to the market economy.
So think about, I don't know, for example, after engineers and architects found themselves full of this cable and these pipes, they started to embed them and hide them in buildings, or embellish them. Think about one of the first model of the Macintosh computer that through a sort of orange glass was showing the mechanism in a sort of aestheticized way. So what we did, our project Paraphernalia, it's a sort of structure completely without any sort of aesthetic, without form, or without, how can we say, just pure shape, that served as an anchor for for all sort of devices that we can find nowadays spread around the city in a way.
So basically, what we started to do, like maybe we can come back like to the previous slide. No, it's not working. But anyway, like what we started to do is like to think how technology is propagated today, which are the devices that are really affecting our space and the conception of our space. So for instance, in the urban field, we have antennas from whatever type. We have a small GPS receiver. We have antennas for cable connection. We have antennas for wireless and so on. But then we have also like a layer of technology which is used to observe and to communicate about nature. And then we have surveillance camera, and then we have all these kind of communication transponder that are used by cargo ship mainly to communicate their position second by second. And then also we have technology to harvest energy, like solar panel or whatever. So then we started like to collect all this technology, and we thought like how we can get possession of this technology, and how we can create a sort of autonomous self where somebody could live without society, but being connected to through technology.
Yeah, in a way, also something that is not part of the tools, but is embedded in our sort of portable mini station, survival station, and broadcast structure. You cannot see it from here, but in a way, there is also one side of it full of survivalist elements like blankets to sleep, like pillows, or like just
like a shower,
shower
portable
bag.
shower, and so on.
As you can see, I mean, it was quite, this is still now in Triennale locked up. The idea is that you can have this device where tools and where technology is completely brought out from the interior and from the hidden space, and just put it in showcase and display. And as we were saying before, we used the text of Rainier Banham scrolling in this LID strip that was a sort of, again, a sort of mooring, a sort of prayer, and sort of like similar to what we did with Machine of Loving Grace, expressing a kind of, let's say, motif that we like a lot, and it was also the inspiration of the installation itself.
So basically, what happened during these very interesting 3 days of conference was that we were listed among other projects that use technology, but in a kind of conservative way, like trying to use technology to harvest energy from nature, to use natural material, to recycle material, to recycle technology itself, to recycle standard objects from architecture in other kind of artifacts.
Actually, efficiency was really present in the exhibition.
It was really present, and in fact,
morally, like efficiency in a moral way.
Exactly, exactly. And then this kind of let us make us feel like a sort of outcast in this
outsiders,
kind of outsider in this panel of people. But somehow we kind of discovered that we thought about this, and we decided somehow that like the other project were, of course, making super interesting statement, but they were still using technology in the most efficient way, which is the greenwash way, let's say. And this way, of course, is still a tool to behave within the market economy.
Exactly. It's almost like using them without the critical knowledge that you need to also realize when you are being either surveilled, or when you're being used, or when you're being overused by this sort of technology. In a way, I would say that with this project, is from now on we are aiming again to sort of bring this concept that they are going to be even more present in our daily life. Also the idea of coding that seems like a magic or something that we cannot do and we have to leave it up to the expert. Maybe it's not really like this. Maybe it's really up to us to understand what is being done around us, and what are the protocols, how things are being decided, which kind of tracking and GPS we're being controlled by. And I think it's really important that every one of us starts now to questioning technology, not only as a tool.
Yeah. Well, to conclude, maybe some more negative effect of our using technology in an efficient way. Well, we discovered basically that this attitude, of course, is not commercial at all. Like you cannot sell anything, and the kind of output on our life is that like we started to interact much more with the world of contemporary art rather than architecture, because this is kind of a sort of our approach is a kind of sort of cathartic way of dealing with technology, releasing obsession, and also using technology in a kind of mature way. I would say. Yes.
I think that's it.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much, Guy, for this lecture. It was very, very, very interesting. I just want to remind to the audience that if they want to ask something or some question, they can use the Q&A box. in the ment, or I can, or you can raise the hand and I can allow you to speak, or by well. Anyway, in the meantime, I want to say that I found this lecture particularly brilliant. And as I previously announced, you are always in line and up to date with contemporary events, especially in telling the dynamics that characterize our society. And I would love to ask you to read one of your favorite stories from the ones you have shown us before.
Which one?
Your favorite.
Oh, go for your.
And I have my favorite, so I will read my favorite maybe later. But I want to know which is your favorite.
I will read probably my favorite one, which is one of the first. I remember I wrote this. I wrote this in a very kind of how do you say, like sort of a personal way somehow, like
Okay.
kind of telling this my story, but also the story of people that have my same age in their teenage, let's say.
Okay.
It goes in this way. He finally reached the altar where identities were built. What color do you want to emanate today? You remember the last day of school, the day they were allowed to be whatever they dreamed to become. That was the day Elliot chose to be a punk. And that's it.
Oh, well, that one was my favorite too. And
it's very catching.
yeah, I really love that one. In fact, I was wondering if who is Elliot? It's you, Elliot. You are Elliot, and why you want to be a punk?
No, I think as I was mentioning before, Elliot is actually a kind of the teenage from the 90s, first 2000 in United States, because like I guess I have felt inspiration. I was inspired a lot by the punk movement, the grunge movement in the United States. And
Yeah.
I think that this was a common knowledge, a common inspiration of the people around me. And that we are listening only to rock band or grunge band or punk band, electronic or coming from English speaking language. And this was very kind of thriving for me, because like somehow like I felt in that moment that we were all part of a global system, something that I don't feel today anymore. And I think that period, the one where globalization was propagandated, the one in which books as The End of the Nation State have been written, was probably the only period in which really we were all kind of linked by a cultural background.
Yeah.
I think today people in their 20s, like I don't even know what, like we are millennials. What is coming next after millennials? We are
Gen X, no, Gen Z. We're
Gen
millennials,
Z.
probably. Gen
I'm
Z
a bit
are
older
after
than
now.
you, but anyway.
I think it's also honestly something really I was reading just a few days ago. In these years when the globalization was at these heights, when it was really at the top, it was also when no global was a really strong movement, and it was the first time that it was imposed a red zone in Italy. It was for the G8 in Genova, and for the first time the state had the power to block public space for people. So it's crazy.
And for the first time, I mean, I don't know if it's the first time, but in Italy was big things like during G8 in Genoa. G8 in Genoa, many profile of people that were coming to protest against the G8 were scanned, and they built this enormous database of information about like the people. And I mean, I think like that period that of course has many, like in the same months, 9/11 happened, G8 in Genova, like it was kind of a sort of turning point moment.
Maybe also now. Maybe we're coming back.
Probably yes.
To
Probably
like
yes.
that.
I mean, I think we are still too much inside. I wasn't realizing that. Like I was kind of very young, but I wasn't realizing that was so important at the moment. But then I can experience the consequences of that moment. I had the experience, and probably we will experience like the consequences of coronavirus in years from now.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I have a question from the audience. Someone say, you mentioned the concept of abnormal as a graphic normal. This is manifesting in physical installation and arts exhibit. Has there been any exploration from you guys in the virtual 3D world, VR? But I can say I've tried the VR of one of your projects. It was crazy. It was like entering this unbelievable world. Can you explain something?
More about this?
It's a really good question. Honestly, as we said, we are using technology in a dumb way. Like so, also VR. When you go in that realm, another thing that we didn't mention is that in our image, the one that you can see in our screen now, perspective is completely fucked up. It's just made for this view. You know? When you want to create a image, when you are inside it, you have to really respect some rules. The things needs to be in the same, the real size.
The position
the
that
real
they
position.
appears to be. While like,
So,
for instance, when we construct the image, like things are scaled up randomly, and like distances are kilometers away from
just for one view,
because we build the view from the perspective point, not from the plan. Like so, this is kind of something that we. It was a problem that we encountered when we translate the space in VR, because of course we were asked.
So we did it. Yeah, they asked us, the guys from Anis Gallery, they have also a render company, and they asked us to produce a model, and we did it. And we had, together with the exhibition, we had a small experience where you could have two different stories, and you could enter it in these spaces. And honestly, I have to say it was really incredible for us. Like for me, it was almost also one of the, it was 2 or 3 years ago. VR was still not so big, and
it was kind of popping out, but
but also like it was not still at the price that everybody can get. So for me, it was the first time trying it on our own project.
Or at least it was. I mean, people were considering VR as a sort of crappy
system,
technological tool, like for instance as rendering engine as well. Like, so of course it was interesting for us, like, to use it. We will do something more. And also tomorrow, for example, the jury that we have, the critics that we will do for Kinda in Bangkok is held in a virtual reality world. I think it's super interesting. And what if, of course, in the future, we might think of using our own environment to host some events. But of course, when we did it, was really powerful. And we are actually, I mean, before coronavirus, we were working on a 3D, on a physical installation that was using VR. We have been also collaborated with a company in Italy that produced VR for art exhibition. And we have been exhibiting our drawings with them. We are not yet able to create stuff like that. Personally, I'm much more attracted by game design, which I think could be very interesting for us to
develop. Look into.
But anyway, like VR is a big thing.
But guys, I would love to ask you a very down question. How heavy are usually your works? I mean, when I try to do something on Illustrator on a Rhino, my Mac is crashing constantly. So I think that your kind of images are really heavy. I mean, they will be at least 1 gigabyte. No, I'm joking. How heavy are them?
I mean, it depends by the scale you are developing the image, because like when we do stuff on fabric, it's a pain in the ass. I
That's
have to say.
crazy. For some fabrics, we had to do like, of course, when you, first of all, remind that you that for Instagram, the quality that you need is really low at the beginning. But then when
Yeah.
we do big thing, we really had to start splitting things. Since also we use a sort of analog way of doing images, because at the end of the day, as we keep saying, we use technology, but also there are still a lot of manual coloring and manual work with Photoshop,
Yeah,
manual
there's
Photoshop.
of course lots of post-production.
Dirty things happening. So yeah, it can happen that the images are really huge. Some, for one curtain, we had to produce 35 tiles of 1 or 2 giga each. So it was an image made of, like if the screen is made of 35 different renders.
Yeah, for instance,
Wow.
for the one of the project that we show, the first curtains we have been commissioned. Yeah, it was a rendering that was scale 1:1, and it was I think 4 meter by 4 meter.
Yeah.
Right, we have to render an image by 4 meter by 4 meter, something like that. Because of course, like our production is in a raster code. Let's say it's not vector based; it's raster based.
Yeah.
So these, of course, create lots of implication when you go in large scale, and of course, our computers.
Yeah, computer are crappy like yours. Like we are all from the same generation. We have to survive in a way.
Yeah, no, I was asking this because I remember one lecture taken by MVRDV. They were talking about the market in Rotterdam, and they were like scared me because they were taught that they were explained that for each of the pixelated piece that compose the internal facade of the market, they were used 1 terabyte. So I say, well, I can do that. How can they do that? Well, they have I have a big team, so it's easy. Anyway, I have another question. Someone asked me, I wanted to ask the host if they have ever visited any of their render scenes in a dream state.
Well, I don't know how it, I mean, honestly, everything comes out from like.
No, I never dream. Actually.
Never dream that.
You never dream about that. Well, but
no, I actually, like, for me, it's quite. I think it's quite difficult for me, like, to remember a dream that done like the night before. Yeah,
I
but
dream a lot.
anyway.
But the thing is that we are so close to the screen when we produce these images on small screen that it's almost as we are really dreaming them, because we are 1 centimeter. Yeah, it's really, and sometimes since it's a process that is not really linear, it's not really rational. A lot of time it's just you have an inspiration, you start. We can say that it's not about dreams, but yes, it's not even written down before. No, it's just whenever you have something, you just start and do that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, as we mentioned before, we have like this enormous collection of 3D things that we model or we downloaded, and we start like to place things together. And yes, I mean, we have like these 2 fetish rituals, or either we construct an architecture out of this object, collapsing them in a 3-dimensional manner, or we place one next to each other, like to create a sort of landscape of object. That's how we do. I mean, it is very difficult to come out with an image directly. Because we don't know really
what's coming out. Coming out. Just play with the gimbal and you see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh well. Yeah. Wait. I'm trying
I have a question for you guys.
Yes, please, Dan.
Sorry. No, sorry to interrupt. I'm just looking at the images that you do produce. I mean, they all do have this kind of nice rendered quality to them. There seems to be a kind of uniformity across the spectrum of all the different images. Is each one different, or are you doing the same thing each time? Is each one kind of its own challenge?
At the beginning, we had like this sort of scenario in mind as a sort of kind of jungle.
Yeah, we had a palette in the beginning that was a bit more straight, but also we have to take in account that the normal vectors
offer
produce
already.
It's always a sort of same range of color that goes from blue, passing in a lot of shades of pink and violet, and then going to green when they are horizontal. So even if you then move the saturation, and we play a lot with saturation and colors, at the end of the day, the basic, it's always started from the same palette.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
It's also true that at the beginning we're super inspired by Indian temples.
yeah, exactly.
The one, for instance, in I don't know if I'm pronouncing correctly,
Just,
like Kapelesvarar.
I don't know what.
It is basically like a sort of huge pyramid where you have lots of statues of gods that are kind of surrecting the floor of the stacking of the pyramid, and each Indian god is a different color. Of course, like the range go from the lightish pink to the super eye-shocking purple. I mean, it was of course an inspiration, and of course, like the Indian temples are placed inside the jungle, so somehow like you really started from that. And
there are
then,
some images that we showed before that are really.
Yeah, of course. There is especially one that is sort of
exactly. Is your choice of color more a question of visibility, or it's more related to a psychological question, or is just like, what's about your color palette?
It doesn't tell really about our psychology, I think. I mean, it probably does, but we don't know.
Then we have to ask to
it's probably something that it's unconscious.
Yeah, we have to ask.
Go back to Sigmund Freud to ask why I choose the blue for. I personally have some 2 or 3 colors that I like a lot, and I know how to have them, and I know exactly, like, there's this kind of blue that I always know that I want to have in the image, and I try to give it to the most important features. Some colors I like, for example, me personally, the yellow is the one that I like less. I like much more something going to the pink and the blue, but also sometimes we have period in we have a lot of yellow, but I don't know, it's really
happens. But another thing about the color is that the color dictate, I mean, the gradient dictate the choose of the shape, because of course, like if you have a rectangle, it will just express flat color.
Yeah, true.
So it is a rectangle and it doesn't have curvilinear surfaces, so that means that basically like you don't have gradients. So we really started to have like super curvy stuff, modernized architecture, like in the image that you have in the background, for instance, like you have like this sort of infrastructure erected by I don't know, like a ionic column, I guess, like it's the shape
it's
of
like super decorative, and also
and then you have like the you know, you have like a sort of three-dimensional surface, and from the three-dimensional surface comes out the normal gradient.
That's also why plants and statues, for example, turns out were super nice, because plants are really detailed. They have a lot of differences in the geometry. The less rich an object is of geometry and change of angle, the less interesting is for us to put it in an image.
Yeah, I mean, we tried also to work business modernist. Like we tried like to use objects, but they weren't really working. I mean, I think like the way we choose the object is really related to simultaneously to the effect and to the narrative.
Exactly.
But there is also the gradient effect.
That was very interesting. Well, guys, unfortunately, we are running out of time. And so if someone will have the last question, someone? Okay. So I will have another question. Well, what's your next step? I mean, which will be your next work? What do you wanna do?
Well, can I say just because of course also the questions they reveal that it's, what's come out more is a sort of artistic and crazy dreamy way, but honestly before that we are architects and we're
Yeah,
still
exactly.
architects. So I guess after images we went to physical space, and now what we're doing is trying to sort of go bigger in the scale. We're doing a process in the last few years, and gradually we're increasing the scale of intervention. So from images to small installation to exhibition, and slowly I think it's just coming out naturally. We're finding project that inspires us to have complex, more complex tasks.
And, and of course, like what interests us more, I mean, we wouldn't end up like to, of course, like if somebody comes from us and say, hey, do you want to design my house or whatever? Yeah, okay, nice. The most interesting things. We are really triggered by the fact that we have complete freedom to communicate something, and the scale of the art installation for now, I think it works nice.
Really well. I have to say we had some problems more, let's say, because colors comes out a lot, but for example graphic design is a field that we find a bit more sterile for us, like the just use of colors itself of images. It lose a bit all the sort of meaning that we can really work on when we do physical installation. And also again as architects we love to go ourselves in the huge store and buy screws, spray them. I think that's really part of our obsessions. I think we will keep doing that in a way. We have a couple of exhibitions that were supposed to open, something interesting we didn't tell you, but of course you can check on our website. So of course we are still an exhibition to do, and we will keep you updated what's happening after this phase. I don't know actually.
Yeah, I mean one of the
a very big question.
Always thought is like to put all the image and all the text in a kind of publication somehow, in a curated publication, because like we feel that Instagram platform is coming to kind of end, like it's a kind of saturated. I mean, we really enjoyed like to use it as a sort of to disrupt, of course, the order of the Instagram platform. But yes, I think we need like something else. Of course, we like also to print stuff still.
Even if we struggle a lot. I mean, it's true that sometimes our colors are super efficient or like they work really well on the screen, but the print has always been something super fascinating. And also, again, to answer the question of one of the previous questions, is try to integrate or maybe game design. So in the parallel to installation, trying to experiment more in the digital world and again technology.
Questioning.
Very interesting. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming. I love to talk with you, and you inspire me a lot with all this color, with all your infrastructural machinery and your digital background that you created. So thank you so much, and I have to end this lecture, unfortunately.
Thank you for the call.
I hope to see you soon.
Thank you to the school. See you.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.